What are your thoughts of Gary Hart as a booker and as a manager? I read his book and was completely blown away by it, as I've missed out on most of his career due to being a little too young and not having cable until the early 90s. I had no idea about how he impacted the business in so many careers. Also, do you have any knowledge of the heat between he and Jerry Jarrett concerning their time in Georgia? He mentions it in his book, but I have never heard Jerry Jarrett's side. Would love to hear your take on it if you have one.
Well, as far as Gary, first of all, his book was tremendous because he's a manager like me, like J.J. Dillon. He kept his books and his facts and figures, so he had dates in the right places and et cetera, et cetera. There was opinion that some folks may differ with or whatever, but he also had a very entertaining book just from a factual, wrestling chronological basis. As a booker, I thought he did an excellent job, especially his runs in Dallas, and I really only got to appreciate, because you got to remember, he was booking a lot of time before I was even going to the matches live, much less in the business, and we didn't know at the time what a booker was. So I only knew Gary Hart as the manager. Until the late 80s and 90s when I got to know him as a person, and then obviously studied more wrestling history from an insider's perspective. But he's had several very successful runs as a booker. As a manager in his younger days, he had tremendous heat, and he's Dusty Rhodes' favorite manager because of all the heat he had in Florida. To be honest, at the time, he was one of those guys when we were together in WCW, and I liked Gary personally, but he didn't work that hard at ringside. I was manic. I was all over the place, et cetera. Managing had kind of changed at that point, and the Jimmy Harts and myself, who were a little more up-tempo, were getting more in vogue. But at the same time, I was critical in my young days of, well, look at Gary. He's just standing there. Or he's not doing this or he's not doing that. Well, as I got to know him more and in hindsight, and also after getting old, the guy was in a plane crash. So he wasn't going to be bumping around a lot, which really fucked him up bad. The plane crash had killed Bobby Shane. And also, Gary was real old school in that he did everything he could to get heat. And he didn't want to back up or show fear because he was still that young, tough guy that he really was from the south side of Chicago. So whereas the rest of us heel managers would put the baby faces over, oh my God, he's coming. Gary was more evil, but he did that for long-term survival for himself in the business because he was always out to make sure that people knew that Gary Hart was the real deal. So, overall, I think it's only, and actually I still learn things about him from reading the book about his booking career and philosophy. He developed a lot of great talent, or helped develop it. As far as the story with Jerry Jarrett, I never heard Jerry's side of it. I know that he gave me my gimmick as a rich mama's boy based on Playboy Gary Hart, the millionaire Playboy from Chicago. Gary went into quite explicit detail. I can't say who was right because I wasn't there and I haven't heard the other side, but I think that a lot of it stemmed from heat on Gary's side when he was the booker in Australia for Jim Barnett, and when Barnett sold the company over there to come back to Atlanta and fight the War of 72 with Ann Gunkel that led to Turner Broadcasting doing a 2-hour wrestling program on Saturday night, blah, blah, blah. Gary had been figured in heavily for Barnett. Gary was the booker for Barnett. Gary was invested in the Australian business, and it was sold to people from Tennessee and the Welch family, and Jerry Jarrett was associated with them, obviously, because of his tenure and stature as a booker and wrestler in Tennessee. So I think right off the bat, they probably weren't going to be good, close personal friends. And for more information on it, you'd have to read everybody's books.